Oh man, I did not prepare for this at all. Now that I'm starting to realize.
Oh, that's okay. That's why I was saying maybe we do it in a few sessions.
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking, because I didn't know what you had planned either, and I was just kind of thinking like maybe we would start out just talking about a few of the themes.
Yeah.
Kind of maybe like some general approach type stuff, but I can talk about each of them for like quite a while, I would think. But and I didn't prepare either.
Yeah. One question I was curious about is whenever I'm trying to work with motifs and themes and stuff like that, my general approach tends to be like I kind of just have a list of like 5 or 10 or whatever in my head, and whenever I need to write a part, whether it's like a voice in a counterpoint section or like just a bass line or something like that, I'll see if I can work that motif into that part or make the part out of that motif.
Yeah.
But what I'm wondering is, because I kind of just do that willy-nilly, but you guys have to, you also have like the responsibility, quote unquote, to the story.
Yeah.
Like my thought would be that you can't just draw any random motif at any given moment, because that might take away from the story a bit.
Yeah, I think, well, especially with our approach, I mean, I think in the future we would be a little bit more courageous with that in terms of like cementing certain themes to certain characters or certain events in the story or whatever. Mm-hmm. But especially with the albums, because we're always trying to make them flow as best as possible musically without people knowing the story. So, like, in other words, we don't want you to feel like you're listening to a musical without the visuals, right? Like, you know, essentially, like, it's a very musical-esque, theatrical type of thing. But so I think like what would flow out of that, if we did take every theme to concretely be attached to a character or to a certain event, then really what we would have to do is, okay, then my voice would have to represent a specific character. Matt's voice would have to represent a specific character. Allie's voice does represent a specific character because she's the only female.
Yeah.
You know, that's the problem with men writing stories, is how do we write a girl? We don't know. But so there's still a bit of, but in that sense, our approach is almost exactly the same as yours, is trying to see where a theme can fit. Of course, there's like, no, that, you know, that just doesn't work musically, or it takes away from the main idea. Mm-hmm. But there are certain themes where I would say, so like the theme, this one. Like, I would say that's like a Reptor's theme, right? And a lot of that has to do with how, like, where it originated. So it's like we originally came up with that melody when we were writing the song in Putra Stagnum, and so it was like, that was so early on as far as the birth of the concept. It was like, yeah, for us, this theme is always Irreptor's theme. And so when you hear it come back in through Chains with just like the whistle, and it's, I don't even remember what key it is, it's like, you know, definitely that was like a story moment, like, because the scene for that is Irreptor lifting the crown over his head, you know, his name, you know, basically changing his name from Cinder to Irreptor. And so it's like, that theme comes back. So there are some like moments like that, and to me those are the most like spellbinding moments, and like, you know, the give you the chills, whatever, however many words they've come up with that for now, and for Sound ASMR or whatever.
And I guess so the origin of that was that you wrote in Putra Stagnum, it was a song mostly about a Reptor. So just like kind of the main melodic motif from that song you lifted for the other story moments.
Yeah, that was definitely the genesis of that particular melody. Once we did that, because that was the first, it wasn't the first song that was written for Blessed He with Boils, but that was the first song Matt and I wrote together, and we were like, okay, we're going to do a full-length album, and this song's definitely going to be on it. And so from there, it was like, we want to take this theme, you know, throughout the whole album. So like, here's the deal. If I were to write the whole thing again, starting from Blessed He through Act 1 and 2, I would have such a clearer idea now about what the story even is.
Right.
Because the story was being developed as we wrote music. And so it's like, there's a lot of things like I look back and I'm not disappointed about how the music turned out, but I'm disappointed about like, oh man, if I had established this character, like there's so many cool, exciting musical things that I could have done. So I think to answer your question, if I were to approach it now, I would sit down and I would write down all the characters, and I would write down the events, and I would write down the places. And so I would have themes for characters, and for places I might have more of like maybe chord progressions or mood elements, maybe elements of production. And then like for events, it would be a combination of the two, like the character themes and the places. And so I would, so if I had the actual storyline written out, you can see how that's a much easier process about where certain themes are going to go.
You can even like make a chart and say, okay, this motif is going in this song somewhere, and this one is going here somewhere.
Right. And that would vaguely happen, you know, as far as before writing the songs, as well as like, okay, what is this song going to be? And especially for Earth and Accent, I had to know what the general story was and what at least one main theme was going to be in that song to establish it as a song in the album. I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but maybe more to answer your question is that was paid attention to when we were able to, when there was a very vivid picture of what was really happening in the story, and I would be like, oh, this theme has to happen right now. But as far as what you're saying, like for writing like inner voices and stuff, I think that's great, just drawing through thematic material, because even it's kind of without actively trying to create cohesion throughout the whole work, you can do it that way by like introducing these lines that are only going to be heard subconsciously, but it's creating this mood and everything using the themes that you created, and that's really our approach to Counterpoint as well. Is how many themes can we
cram in
contrapuntally, and and like I was saying in the about the video you put together, I was like, that's like all the main melody ones, but it's like all the bass parts and the viola lines. It's like it's just thematic material everywhere, and I love writing that way because
I almost considered going in and tearing apart all the stems and everything, but I feel like for the average listening experience, people aren't going to be trying to pick out viola parts.
Nope.
I think it's a matter of like what people are hearing while they're listening to the album.
Totally.
And even then, there were some that I managed to hear, but like I don't think the average listener would have heard them. It's just because I was like pouring over everything.
Dude, there were some you pulled out where I was like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that's another question. Is what's it called? Elegies of a Forgotten Race. Mm-hmm. I pulled out 2 instances of motifs that were repeated that I don't think you guys intended.
No, that was that is Matt's composition, and that existed before anything. But I still think probably subconsciously I pulled things from it. He's like, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a little melodic interest there that definitely fits the Xanthochroid framework. But yeah, those probably, you're right to say those probably were not intentional.
Yeah. And that's the other thing about some of the motifs that you're working with are basically just diatonic walkdowns in a minor key. Yeah. So anytime you have something like that, you could call it a motif.
So there were certain things, especially with this theme, where it's just like, sometimes that wasn't really thematic. Actually, where that came, but why that was used as a motif, and that was because this. Mm-hmm. That's where we pulled it from, and it just we just kind of decided that just in a really general, in a really vague sense, the album was all about like a descent into like corruption, into the like getting to the lowest point of still existing at all. And it's like kind of just that idea distilled, and still a very unsatisfying resolution on the second scale degree. But yeah, so both of those major themes were pulled from In Future Stagnum, and that's why it works so well as an album with that as like the
it's kind of just the So what was the same thing with Of Earth and Accent?
Thematically?
Well, I'm just wondering, like, did you have did you start with a single song in Of Earth and Accent and then say, okay, let's draw all of our themes from To Higher Climes Where Few Might Stand, or did you go into it with more of a broad plan?
Yeah, it was definitely a broader plan. It was kind of like, okay, we put out Blessed He, how can we possibly top ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. Which is another reason why it took so long. It's like, So for Earth and Accent, there were several songs that just weren't used on Blessed He that I knew wanted to be used. So it was definitely a mash of themes. It wasn't as it didn't have a singular source like I feel Blessed He did. But yeah, one major theme, and we do use it in Higher Climes, was just kind of an inversion of that. And you pulled it out. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's a really major theme on Earth and Accent, and I think it might not have been pinpointed in the video you made.
I think it was.
There's a few, or maybe to me, maybe it's even bigger in my mind than it actually came out on the album. But it's like it's everywhere on the.
Yeah, I did notice it wasn't anywhere in Blessed He while I was looking through. I could have sworn that I heard it in Blessed He, but then
no, it's probably just because it's that inversion. Just that it's the same four notes, but yeah, it's like because it's a precursor or whatever. But that was one of those themes where Matt was like, okay, what do you got for like this album? And I was like, I don't know, this. And he was like, that's great. I was like, it's nothing.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is because the simpler the motif, the easier it is to work it into melodies and mutate it and stuff like that. If you've got a whole melody that only really works in, say, a particular scale, then you can't really mutate it and use it in different ways quite as easily.
Yeah, almost. I think where that theme might have come from, as far as like inspiration from the story, I always had some of the lyrics I wrote like really early on. They come in through chains, grasping at the hair-like roots that grow out from the tracks, and then only to swipe through the open air or whatever. Like that was a lyric that had been around for a really long time, and that's kind of the theme of this album too, is this striving to reach the top and constantly failing for Cinder, really. And then in Blessed He, so he got what he wanted, and then it's the descent into madness. So like
that's an interesting like literal interpretation.
Yeah, so there's lots of like I would call those like the meta themes, right? Like the really big themes that try to takes on much more than a character or a place or an event. It's like a whole kind of the whole deal. So I would say that for Blessed He, it's this 4-note motif, and then for Of Earth and Accent, and I'll go through and pull out where more of that happens, because it was definitely a ton. But yeah.
So in retrospect, how do you feel about In Cultus being kind of the black sheep of the chronology?
Here's what I want to do is it is such,
I mean,
a bastard.
Maybe Black Sheep was a little bit harsh, but it doesn't have any of them other than the main melody from Last Relic of Accent being repeated at the end of Blessed He.
Yeah. And that actually does come back as well at the piano solo at the end of Through Caverns. This piano solo,
it's the chord progression.
So it's and it's like a it just and it had these orchestrations that I made, but apparently somebody didn't like them, so they're not up on the album.
The piano solo had orchestrations, but they didn't.
Yeah, it had orchestrations, but on it, dude, I don't even know if it was like if Matt didn't like them or if he just didn't know, because we did all the orchestrations in Logic and all the mixing in Pro Tools. So like it could have been something as simple as that. Either way, they weren't really like, it was whatever. I'm still things happen.
Be interested to hear it though.
Yeah. And so that was definitely another example of, okay, I'm taking this thematic moment from Last Relic and I'm putting it in this song because that's what's happening in the story. So that would be another example of very intentional theme placement to line up with the story. But yeah, maybe I'll put out a Sam version.
And in the chronology, doesn't Last Relic come right after that song? Yeah.
So it's a little ode to Last Relic.
Yeah.
No, what I'd love to do is take the tracks from In Cultus and incorporate them into the listening experience. So basically, entirely redo them, but with the same, because I feel like Blessed He and Earth and Accent are definitely a consistent listening experience, even if Blessed He is, it's less on the orchestration end, but it's still kind of the same approach.
Yeah, basically the same sort of general sound, whereas In Cultus is more black metal with some symphonic additions.
And so I love it for its own merits. And at that point, it was the songs themselves developing thematically. So the songs themselves have repeated themes and variations on the themes that happen throughout the songs happening in there. But
one thing I was trying to do when I was making this video is make sure to only pull out instances of motifs where they are across multiple songs.
Yeah.
Because if I was doing all of the instances of motifs that were just within a single song, that would basically be all 90 minutes of of your music. So
yeah. So it's like looking back on Occultist, it's kind of like, oh, that's like oh, it's Child's Play. We just did contained in one song. But at the same time, there's a lot of people who like Occultist specifically because of that, for the songs being so distinct.
Yeah.
From each other, and there's a lot to be said about that. I mean, that's how.
Well, even within the chronology, it kind of makes sense that they're not crossing over with each other, because they're in such separate parts of the story.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, no, I'm working on a listening guide for Blessed He with Boils, and it's gonna like include Occultist chapters.
Oh, okay.
To draw that all together. But yeah, dude, I'm super proud of Occultist. I think it's awesome.
I like it too. It just sounds different from the rest of the stuff. Is all I
think there's something about the production it's way too trebly, and it's just a lot rawer, and I wish a lot of the parts were played cleaner, because at that time nobody was playing guitar, so it was mostly myself playing electric guitar, which is not my forte, and Matt played some as well, and Matt's a much cleaner electric player, but he didn't know the parts, so it was like that was just what it was.
Yeah.
And so right after we recorded that, we met Brent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I remember the story that Brent told about how he joined in that documentary that one guy made on YouTube.
Oh man, I hate that.
Oh, do you do?
That documentary so much.
Why is that? I won't put this in the video.
Oh no, that's okay. No, please do.
Oh, okay.
We were trying to make it like entertaining and funny, and he like got rid of all of that, and the only funny thing he left was our totally unfunny story about playing at the gay bar that like wasn't even a story, and I was like, dude.
Yeah, I did notice that you guys seemed a little bit more serious than you normally do.
It was just like, why didn't we make this ourselves? Like, it didn't represent our... Anyway.
Xantho Christmas is the true Xanthochroid documentary.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, Brent joined. We were rehearsing. Our friend's dad had this office space that he wasn't using, and we had set up in there for a couple weeks, and we auditioned a few people, and Brent came in, and he was like 16, and he was the only person who had truly learned the songs and was just like windmill headbanging while playing the songs really well, and we're like, okay, you got it, dude.
Yeah. So what's kind of the plan? Is there more to the story after Blessed He, or are you kind of done with the story basically?
I wouldn't say I'm done. The story would definitely enter a new. There's kind of no limit, because I think some people are unclear on what happens at the end of Blessed He, as they should be, because the song doesn't really tell you. Mm-hmm. But the listening guide will clarify. Yeah, Tanos is still alive. He's just kind of overcome with the responsibility that comes with the crown, and so it's a decision. Does he fulfill his role as the rightful ruler, or does he abdicate like his father did, and is that wisdom, or is that is that fear, or whatever? But the idea is, after that, would be exploring all the different places and cultures in Edemos. And so it's like, if Tanos were part of that story, I always thought of him as kind of like a wanderer type figure, going around meeting, learning about the world that he's supposed to be, the god king of, and seeing all these different cultures. And I think the stories that would take place in there would be like a smaller scale stories, you know, dealing with you know, different peoples that Tanos encounters.
Yeah, so the story of the brothers is pretty much over, but
Yeah,
but
there's,
the
like-
story, obviously there's more to do in the world.
Yeah, and the story is like about this, you know, the political, economic, spiritual fallout of like Ereptor's reign, and how it's, you know, he started this irreversible path, you know, for mortal man, and you can't stop you can't stop advancement once it starts going.
Yeah.
It's you know, once that flame is lit, like it's going to keep going. So he's dead, but it's all about the fallout from that. So actually, we did write this short story. A friend of mine who's in a band called Empyrean Throne, we wrote a story about like what the post Ereptor world might look like, and that might be something that was more of like a short film kind of idea. I don't know if anything will ever come of it, but yeah, I think the future of Xanthochroid is branching out, deepening the world of Edemos, looking at other characters, perhaps more ancient characters, like you know, looking, you know, maybe at who is Xanthos, you know, that might be relevant since the band is called Xanthochroid. You know, what's the true story of the fall of the relics, and how did that all happen? Like, are there other relics? You know, it's kind of endless, but
Okay.
As far as just the concept of Xanthochroid, all our music is going to deal with situations and people and places and characters in Edemos. So it's really limitless, but still bound to those parameters, you know?
Yeah,
So,
I always got the sense that the scope was always just the story of Tanos and Ereptor.
oh, okay. Yeah.
So it's interesting that you guys are branching out more, and I'm curious how that will affect the music, because you'll be using motifs and themes that aren't related to that story of
yeah.
Tanos and Ereptor.
Yeah, might hear some super awesome echoes of those themes, but yeah.
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 Do you think that'll change your sound overall because it's a different story in different cultures? Like, do you think you'll have more influences from different kinds of folk music around the world, or are you going to kind of keep the sound consistent? Or is it too soon to say?
Yeah, that was kind of always the idea, because, you know, and because of what Matt does too as a composer, as far as composing for video games and creating those soundscapes for different worlds, and he's always using real instruments. You know, we'd never want to create something that was so stereotypically, you know, like
Chinese folk music.
Yeah, Chinese sounding or Middle Eastern sounding. It's like, yeah, we want to take those sounds and put them in our own context of, yeah, I think what would never change about Xanthochroid is what I've identified as like our harmonic language, which is what I think like gives a band its sound, you know?
Yeah.
Like, in my opinion, like if you're into extreme metal, like Opeth is always a really good example. Like they had a very established like harmonic language, like a palette of sounds that had nothing to do with the instruments that they were using, or, you know, whatever, for like, and you can kind of trace like through their albums how that evolved. And then I always thought there was like a sharp divide on a certain album, and that's I kind of never want that to happen with Xanthochroid. I believe that we could do like a fully acoustic album and still have it sound completely Xanthochroid.
I mean, you already have fully acoustic songs, so it makes sense.
Yeah, so yeah.
So you're not going to be using like Arhu violins and major pentatonic scales all of a sudden.
No, probably not, unless it really like contributed to the to the story and was, you know, very, very purposeful. But But yeah, I think as far as the more extreme aspects, I'm sitting here not quite knowing how that will go forward in Xanthochroid and doing like these more exploratory type songs. I think it will probably turn out that we have some songs that include those extreme elements, and then some songs that don't, just like we already do. So what's the big deal?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think really the idea behind trying to do this where we're exploring the world of Etymos and making music for these kind of, I keep saying different cultures, you know, and yeah, it's like, yeah, we want to create music that is a combination of, you know, Middle Eastern, Native American, and Xanthochroid. What would that sound like, right?
Yeah.
And this whole idea is based on like some experience I had and just some things I learned about how integral music could be to older cultures. And we didn't have recordings, you know, so music had to be sung or played.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of cultures would have like songs that you would sing when somebody dies, or songs that you would sing when, you know, something good happens in your life, or as a rite of passage, you would have these cultural songs that would be sung. And I always thought that was really cool, and it just kind of made me again like open my eyes to like what our culture is in America and in the West in general. And it's like nobody can really even,
not a lot of cultures have art music traditions.
Yeah.
In the way that, like, I've actually looked into a lot of world music and folk music from around the world, and it's interesting how something as simple as polyphony is like rarely found around the world. From what I understand, a lot of music from around the world is just like a drone and a melody on an instrument, and then the singer is singing the same melody that he's playing on his instrument, and that's the music.
That's what I've found as well. And yeah, I used to get, I don't know, I still think that there's an infinite level of complexity to something like Indian classical music, even though it is, it's like, to our Western ear, it just sounds like, it all sounds the same. It's like we've got the drone, and then, there's some pretty exotic scales going on, but it's like, there's no, what we're used to as a harmonic progression, and what to us moves us, right? Makes us feel like the music has motion and is going from one point to another. It just seems absent from a lot of these other types of music. And so, that's definitely something that I would not incorporate into Xanthochroid sound. It's like, again, like I said, we're established in our harmonic language as far as
polyphony is an integral part of Xanthochroid's music.
Take a Western approach to harmony and to because I think it's so necessary for storytelling and for emotional impact of the music. But you're right. I haven't found. I'd be super interested to find like a type of music that has a different approach to harmony and to polyphony.
I think some Japanese classical music has kind of counterpoint, where it's not really counterpoint so much as it is just people playing things at the same time. And there's a little bit of that in Azerbaijani folk music as well.
Okay.
But it's still, the focus is like usually on a drone and usually on either a single voice, and if there is a counterpoint line, it's simple. Either that or they're just playing in unison.
It's for a completely, and it's, a lot of their music is for a completely different purpose. Like it's for a spiritual purpose, it's for meditative purposes. It's not for, I'm
not saying that the drone is like is a bad thing by any means. I think it's really fascinating.
No, I'm just saying I would often write it off in the past, just to be like, I'm not learning anything from this. Like, time to dive into some like Scriabin or something crazy. But like,
I think the one thing that you can learn a lot from that actually is dynamics.
Yeah.
and just vocal performance in particular.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, for
especially
sure.
in Middle Eastern music.
Oh yeah, I love the vocalizations that they use and the huge leaps of like trills that, or what, I don't even know how to call them, but yeah.
Yeah, there's a term for it that I don't remember.
Yeah. It's super awesome. But yeah, it's, shoot, I forgot where we started in this.
Something about different cultures in Xanthochroid and Animos.
Well, yeah. So, kind of the intention was to, because in America and in the West in general, we don't have these super folk type of cultures where it's based on community, and you have these oral traditions and things that you know to do when a certain thing happens. It's like, I mean, in my life, like I've just known a lot of people who have died, so I've been at a lot of funerals, and I've been around a lot of situations where, you know, especially if people are not religious or spiritual in any way, they just don't know what to do. And there's a process to when somebody close to you dies, and it's like, yeah, you go through a grieving process, and yeah, you can read about it on the internet and everything, but like, to me, to imagine in that situation, if culturally what we did is sang a song, like a death song, to help us be like, you know, a community, and to go through that process together. I just always thought it would be really cool. It's like, okay, this is what we do, instead of like sitting around trying to come up with some weird like tradition to do for your friend. And this is a super morbid example. It's not very positive, but like, but it was just profound to me. Like I went with a friend of mine to like a Native American sweat lodge experience, and it was the guy who was leading it was like leading all these songs. It's like, yeah, this is a song we sing to like, you know, again, like if someone's died, or if there were a lot more positive. For some reason, I can't think of anything except someone died.
I mean, it's an important part of culture. Everybody dies.
I guess, yeah, it is. But I just felt like there was a void in our culture for knowing what to do, and not being, and it's this not being able to talk about certain things with people, or not knowing if it's right. It's like, oh, should I talk to this person? And just cultures handled everything so much differently. It was like you have this protocol for what to do. And so doing this, going with Xanthochroid, creating these kind of cultural histories and songs that were sung by cultures of Edemos, it was kind of my way of creating this culture that we don't have in the U.S. and you know, stuff like that. So
I actually got a little bit of that general vibe. I don't know if this was in your intention. I was talking earlier about Elegies of a Forgotten Race. Mm-hmm. That felt like some sort of song from within the world, more so than a song written by Sam and Matt about the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So again, yeah, if you want to get a sense for what sorts of things we might be doing, would be more along that lines. Again, it is too early to say. I don't know exactly what everything would sound like, but yeah.
I gotta get that sneak preview, man.
Yeah. No, but I like that description of it'd be more like songs that are coming from within the world. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think, to me, if we were going to tell the story of Xanthos, for example, that would be much more what you're accustomed to from Xanthochroid, right?
Yeah. Talking again about what you guys were, you know, I mentioned earlier, elegies, you didn't really intend those uses of the motif. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on the idea of authorial intent in music and in literature. The idea that, does it matter what the author intended when he was writing, or is it more up to the listener's interpretation? And I think that's an interesting topic to talk about with Xanthochroid, because ultimately the listening experience is the album, you know.
Yeah.
But there is a story that the album is kind of telling.
Yeah.
And you're kind of the authority on that. But so how much do you think it matters what your kind of authority is?
Yeah, so the intent, I think artistic intent is very important, and it's what makes art at all. Some people may not agree with that, but the intent with the music of Xanthochroid and the listening experience on, say, through an album was always to, yes, there's a story behind it, but at the same time, we want the music to stand on its own and it can be of value to a person who doesn't know the story and who has their own interpretation for the meaning of the lyrics. The lyrics were something I agonized over because there are some times where, okay, there's no way that this lyric means anything else than what's happening in the story. But a lot of times the lyrics are very like esoteric, double meaning, hidden meaning, vague meaning, totally up to someone's interpretation what they mean. And I wanted it to be that way. Like I was saying earlier, like I didn't want you to feel like you're listening to half of something, like you're listening to a musical that you're not seeing the scenes in between, right?
Yeah.
So as far as that, our intent was always to evoke a story arc, but not to stifle anybody's own interpretations and creativity, and really to inspire those feelings or images that they get from the music to and to enrich the experience and even deepen the world of Edimos. If you felt really strongly that this song was about this, then tell me, and maybe we'll make it part of the lore.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
That's interesting because, from what I've heard from a lot of authors, there's kind of a general, I guess, position that once the author has finished writing, the book then belongs to the readers entirely. Mm-hmm. So, like, asking the author, what happens to this character after the story ends? It's like, it doesn't matter. I didn't write that far. It's up to you to decide.
Yeah,
if you want to.
Yeah, like what you were asking about. Yeah, what's next? It's kind of like, that's where it is. Like I'm not done with the story personally, but what I really am trying to do with Xanthochroid and that with our fan community now is like and we've talked about stuff too. Like I want to source. Not that I'm mining ideas from the fan group, but I want this to be a bit collaborative, especially as we expand and try to, fill out the lore of these different cultures of Edimos. It's like, why not? Why not use the ideas of the fan community who've taken the story and internalized it, and now can have their own interpretation of what should happen.
Fantasy video games have teams of writers who work on world building, so
yeah, exactly.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but I think it had to begin the way that it began with just me, and then really Matt and I were kind of the two guys doing anything with the story side of Xanthochroid. And yeah, I'm like, with Earth and Axon, we really put it out there as far as what the story is, where, what's happening, who's saying what, who does what, and now I think we've planted a seed with the community of fans listening to Xanthochroid to where we can't ignore what people think about it and what people feel about it, and to me that's really rewarding. And I wouldn't want to shut people out in that sense of like, oh no, you don't know, like what's going to happen. I mean, this,
Yeah.
if you're listening to Xanthochroid now, you're kind of on the ground floor of like what's happening with this story. What's it actually going to be? Where's it going to go? I don't know. Yeah, I want that sort of collaborative side of things. Yeah, that's awesome. I was listening to the Chrono Trigger OST the other day and just like realized how much that shaped my like melodic preferences and all that. Just always like, I was like, wow, this is like so shaped the Xantho sound, you know?
Yeah. I'm not super familiar with the Chrono Trigger soundtrack, but I learned everything I know about modes from Zelda soundtracks.
Yeah.
Ocarina specifically.
You'd love the Chrono Trigger soundtrack, and the game as an experience is really awesome.
Are you familiar with 8-Bit Music Theory, the YouTube channel?
Mm-hmm.
I think he did a video about Chrono Trigger. I haven't seen
the
it.
Non-functional harmony in Chrono Trigger.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. It kind of opened the door a little bit to me thinking about like, oh yeah, what is, because you listen to it and it sounds fine. But yeah, he does a lot of interesting things, like, and a lot of interesting stuff using minor seventh chords. That like he was doing this like A minor 7 to F sharp minor 7, and it doesn't sound weird at all. It's just really cool how he does. I'm like trying to figure it out. It's really cool, just those two chords. I've never put them together, but they have a really...
Yeah.
I can't think of how they would be like a borrowed chord, I guess, but doesn't really use them that way. But
yeah, in non-functional harmony, you specifically aren't thinking about its function
exactly.
in the key.
Yeah, his stuff is so awesome. It's just, I love all the early video game music too, because it was just, they didn't have anything except tones.
Yeah.
You know, they had to create these worlds and atmospheres with just tones and
only three melodic tones.
Yeah, that's
two pulse waves and a triangle wave.
Yeah, that's a whole other deal. But like by the time you get to SNES, it's like, yeah, they had some like sound effects and whatever, but it was still so much just notes. You had to create these worlds with just notes, and that's what appeals to me so much. So I'm the wrong person to talk to about video games, because I haven't played video games for like 12, 13 years now, but like I love the Zelda series. I'll still play that if I get a chance. I don't have a Switch, so you know, woe is me. But
the soundtrack is
it was that. Yeah, it's that music, and I feel like still in a lot of games that I've seen being played. Like I said, I'm not the person to talk to, but it's like I feel like that gets lost with what they're able to do with sound design. It's awesome, like so immersive. But I miss being like, my brain needs a lot of music to be fulfilled musically. Like it needs, like, you know, lots of thick chords and lots going on, and you know, like,
so you're a fan of complex arrangements in general.
Yeah, like I don't get overwhelmed with music. I'm like, to me, it's like the more music, the better. So like,
right.
I don't need like the silent. Oh, this area is so eerie and spooky, so let's do just like silent with some sounds. Like I don't like that. Like give me the weird, ridiculous forest temple music from Zelda that actually makes me feel like sick to my stomach whenever I hear it. So,
yeah. That's the thing about video games nowadays, is that they've gotten so cinematic, and movies need to have silent portions, obviously.
Right.
But video games, I mean, as Ocarina of Time can kind of prove, you can have music playing constantly, except in like a few instances where you've got like just the wolf sound effect in the background, you know?
Yeah.
But it's
of course silence is a great tool to use, but yeah, and I listened to the backward compatible podcast. They were I don't remember what episode it was, but they were talking a lot about what's the line between should you have just made a movie or were you actually trying to make a video game. Like,
I don't think I remember that episode.
It wasn't like the topic of discussion, but they got talking about it. It was fairly recent. Shoot. Oh.
Well, they actually just released an episode today about the upside of cutscenes.
Yeah.
So maybe it was the previous episode, which I didn't listen to.
Really expanding their audience there. But yeah, how did we get there? I had something to say, but yeah, no, I mean
something about Chrono Trigger, I think.
Yeah, you'd really like it,
mm-hmm.
and any composer would really like it. It's a lot of music. It's like in the whole game, there's like 3 hours of music or something.
Yeah, JRPGs.
And, yeah, and it's just, I mean, it's that and Ocarina of Time and a few other games really had a huge influence, just as much as the extreme metal side of things had on Xanthochroid sounds, and
mm-hmm.
for Matt too, especially like World of Warcraft. And one of the few people who didn't turn off the music and just play their Winamp playlist while they play World of Warcraft. Matthew.
Yeah. I never played World of Warcraft, so I honestly wouldn't know.
Me neither. I was like a holdout among my friends. I was like, nope. It just became such a thing where I'm like, no, I'm never going to play it. Because you guys would freak out if I started playing it, so I'm not ever going to play it.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously we're not talking about music anymore. Yeah.
I might include some of this in the video. Who knows?
Yeah, no, that'd be cool. Oh, yeah, the one thing. So it's like we could talk about, like I wanted to talk about this theme. Like the longest melody ever. But yeah, that was definitely, okay, so if there was a central theme to Earth and Axon, that would be it, and that would explain why I couldn't really say what's the central.
Oh, yeah.
But that came from a song that was on our Ice and Extremis demo called Of Earth and Axon Part 1, because the idea for Of Earth and Axon was it would be this 3-part song, and, you know, this was before any of Edimos was thought of or anything, but yeah, this melody was at the center of it. And I always kind of thought of it as like a 2-part, definitely 2 different feelings to this melody, because we have this first part that's pretty angular and uses that same rhythmic motive. Boom, 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 boom. It's using that, and then we have this other part of the melody which you pulled out as a motif. That's very like wandering, not angular at all. Just
it didn't even occur to me that they were part of the same melody. Actually,
yeah,
I pulled them out separately as different motifs in my video.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, no, I'd like to talk about that, because it's like, even for the story-wise concept, it's like you have this first very Ereptor-esque melody, angular, moving quickly, and then this which occurs in so many like different types of contexts. Yeah, like that'd be cool to talk about, like a couple of the central themes and
I mean, honestly, that
Really
that combination reminds me of really the distinction between Of Earth and Axon and Blessed He with Boils,
Oh, really?
because
Yeah.
you've got that angular momentum rising up, as you were talking about earlier, rising up and never grasping sort of thing, and then you've got
Yeah.
this more somber, introspective story that is Blessed He.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Did you? I forgot. And I might even get this right. Did you grab this one? I don't remember.
So I got the second part. I got the
Yeah.
right the.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
I didn't get the
definitely.
first part. Was
But
that repeated
this-
elsewhere?
Bleh. Like the most angular. It's like almost
That's
totally
a black metal riff.
Yeah, and so that's from Imputress.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was. We were just trying to write the most like black metal thing we could. But that's actually the opening of Aquatic. With the French horn.
Yeah.
And then it happens again in The Sound of Hunger Rises. And it's like but yeah, the aquatic version of it happens.
Yeah.
It's in the middle of it. I can't exactly remember how we voiced it, but yeah. That's
Yeah, I
interesting.
guess I didn't pick it out because it's a different scale.
Yeah, it's yeah. That was always one where I was like, nobody's gonna hear that one because it's so different. But
I think if I had been paying closer attention to Aquatic Death Kit Existence, which, by the way, 10 out of 10 title, I think if I had been paying closer attention to that, I would have noticed the connection between that and which song was it from Earth and Axon? Drawing a blank on the name.
Sound of Hunger.
Yeah, I think I would have noticed that because it's the same.
If you were
harmonic
doing
idea.
your job, Nick, you would have noticed. That's the most absurd job in the universe. Find all.
Hey, if I was getting paid, that'd be a fun job at least.
Yeah, there's that one. And then a major one that I'm not sure if you got is from, well, see, now this is where it gets tricky, is where is it really from? Because in my mind it's from the original, like the song that I wrote it for, but it ends up everywhere. But this, that's from Leper's Prospect.
I think I did get that.
Yeah, okay. I couldn't remember because we used that.
It was in Leper's Prospect, and then it was also in Here I'll Stay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's in it. Yeah, exactly. I don't remember how to play my own song.
Actually, I think it was also in Putra Stagnum as the guitar riff, the dun dun dun. That part.
Oh yeah, you did. You
Yeah.
got that for sure. Yeah. To me, I felt like to me that was the motive, and I think what you pulled out was like just the first.
I think
part,
so,
right? Yeah.
Because then you have the da da da, which is what I consider the Winter's End motif.
Yeah. And then at the end of, now I'm just thinking of all of them. At the end of Leper's Prospect. Now this wasn't really a melodic theme because you have that weird breakdown at the end of Leper's Prospect where it's like
Yeah.
That's the guitar part for Winter's End too. And yeah.
I don't think I would have picked that out.
Yeah, because that's
More of a harmonic chord progression
harmonic
sort of thing.
yeah. And so of course that happens, but
One thing I was debating putting in the video is the kind of chanted choirs, the kind of like minimalist choir textures that you had going in Earth and Accent. You know what I'm talking about? Like,
in which song? Sorry.
you had it in a couple of songs in Earth and Accent, mostly Act 2. This sort of thing.
Yeah.
You had that in Walk With Me, O Winged Mother, and Of Aching Empty Pain. Those kind of swirling texture choir things.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that was the same thing. The one in Walk With Me was just, it was just straight up like, how can I do this with a voice? Because I can't do that that's going to sound retarded with choir. Yeah. It'll sound like one of those Smooth McGrew videos or whatever. Like, yeah, so that was it was just literally harmonies that worked with it. But but the Of Aching Empty Pain was a weird song. It was like,
it was very distinct, I think. In
it is, and it was maybe one that I wasn't ever sure that was going to go on the album. But I mean, I'm glad it's on there, obviously, and I made it work with some parts, but but yeah, that whole washy part in there. That was something I think I wanted to do more with, but it was just it came too late. And vocals are like really one of the last things that I do. So when I was like, how are the vocals going to go for this part, and I came up with that whole thing, I was like, well, too late to add in.
I mean, and I made the connection between those. I didn't do it in the video because ultimately there was no like real rhythmic connection or melodic connection or even harmonic connection. It was just kind of the compositional technique that was shared. But I think it was an interesting, I was trying to see if there was any sort of like story connection that was happening in the same way, and I couldn't really. It was just kind of there.
I think those songs are somewhat related, but those. Yeah, probably not.
Those particular moments aren't super related.
Aching Empty Pain is a tough one. The kind of one of the main themes from that was which happens a few times on the album, and so like just in that song in particular, like that happens there.
I didn't pick it out of the vocal melody.
Yeah, and it's so that happens in Higher Climbs, and you picked that out.
Yeah, I got it there and at the end of some song off of Act 1. I forget which one. It's near the end of Act 1. Mm-hmm. But I didn't make the vocal connection.
Yeah, on Sound of Sound Which Has No Name. Yeah, and that's kind of where it overlaps there is but no, it does happen in this.
Oh, actually, now that you mentioned that one that you just played in Sound Which Has No Name, that's also an aquatic Death Kid Existence, right? Sort of.
Yeah,
I mean, not intentionally.
It is. Yeah, that's true. I didn't even. But that was totally. I mean, it's just that Lord of the Rings, right? Yeah. Augmented.
Right.
With the natural fifth in there, but what was I going to say? Yeah, so Aching Empty Pain, it's like we have this from Sound of Hunger, or Sound Which Has No Name, rather. So in some way, so it's it's almost supposed to be an evolution of that. Kind of, and then you have these kind of echoing throughout it. But yeah,
there's a lot of instances where you can say that there's a connection with the motif, but ultimately it's just a different melody that has the same directionality of the intervals and the same number of notes, and that's about the only similarity.
Yeah.
I mean, that wasn't quite. I mean, obviously that wasn't like an intentional use of the motif.
Yeah, no. There's some that you pulled out that I was like I said, I was like, oh yeah, I guess not quite intentional.
Yeah.
To me, this theme is totally different from this. Like to cut.
I think I had those separated while I was analyzing, but I think they might have gotten meshed together in the video somehow.
But I totally see your logic in putting it, because I'm like, oh, they do.
Most of what I was picking out was the da na na na.
Yeah.
That's really the driving.
Yeah, you're right. It is really what puts it apart, because otherwise that's not really.
Well, actually, just those three notes do get repeated and separated out in some instances in Blessed He. I think in Putrid Stagnum has it a few times.
Yeah, for sure. No, but I love that video. It's always kind of like, it's just cool to listen to. Like,
I'm not sure I wish I could do it again, but it's also a ton of work.
Yeah, I know.